Dave Noriega and Greg Wrubell here in Milwaukee. Is that Algonquin?
For the good land.
For the good land, I thought so. So
Yeah.
BYU's here for the 7th time in 8 years. Is that right? I'm getting my facts correct.
7th in the last 8 and 7 in Dave Rose's 9-year tenure. By the way, 7 in the last 8 puts him with exactly 9 other coaches who've done 7 over the last 8 season span. And you might have heard of some of these guys: Krzyzewski, Izzo, Pitino, Self, Williams, guys like that.
I've heard of those guys.
Yeah.
Every once in a while you see them just about every year in the Final Four. So this was really big for BYU because, and Dave Rose mentioned in his press conference, that they're not in a first-round game, that they're not playing that playing game. And it seemed like everyone, all the pundits, even ourselves, had them going to Dayton.
And I think the coaches were kind of conditioned, along with the players, to think the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you look at your numbers if you're BYU, and you think, man, we seem to have earned a pretty solid, footing in this. We should be in, safely or comfortably. But then you see and hear everyone's projections and prognostications, guys who know what they're doing, and they're saying, last team in all week. And I think that really they were expecting to probably have to go to Dayton, which they did, 2 seasons ago. But you're in the dance. At least you're in. But to get the 10 seed and be as comfortably in as they were, I think is a bit of a validation in terms of the model they used. And for Dave Rose, like he said, it was a new scheduling model for this team. In the past, with some extra games to fill, they would find games you can win, preferably home games that will give you a nice win total. And they chose to go a different direction. They took tougher games. They took road games. But ultimately, that decision, that slight alteration in the scheduling model could be what has BYU in Milwaukee and not in Dayton or outside of the dance altogether.
And I thought that was the most fascinating thing about it is people thought last team in, but when the rankings came out, they were 39th. I mean, they were in with no problem.
They were the 8th to last at-large team in. So they were, kind of clear of the bubble at that point. And it really does show what the committee values. And they've been pretty consistent with this. They want to see, what was your scheduling intent? What did you try and do with the non-conference portion of your schedule? Did you challenge yourself? Did you give yourself, games that have win look really good on the resume? And even should you lose them, were you competitive? And just the fact you wanted to play those games means something. And then when you add to that fact, the fact that the WCC was the number 9 RPI, Sager, and Pomeroy league this year, it was a good league too. People said bad losses, the bad losses at Portland, Pepperdine, LMU Pacific. They're only bad losses if you're in a bad league.
Right.
And really, the committee respected the strength, the overall strength of the WCC. And so I think, in the end, the phrase body of work gets used. BYU's body of work was definitely tournament worthy. Now, it was all done with Kyle Collinsworth, and they're a different team without him, no doubt about that. They'll have to play better, everyone play better without Kyle to win against Oregon, whoever they might face, should they advance. There's no doubt about that. But the resume was indeed tournament worthy. And I think Dave Rose and his guys should take a real measure of pride in that.
And really fascinating that they completely seemed to ignore the fact that Kyle was injured. And I think that was maybe the blessing of playing such a difficult schedule, because it would have been so easy to say, listen, they lost their second leading scorer, leading rebounder. I mean, he's everything, leading assist man. But they said, you know what, we're going to look at the season as a whole. It seems like the tournament committee is kind of evolving a little bit. They're not just looking for the 25, 27 win teams, and they're really looking at what did this team prove over the course of the year.
They valued 34 games over what happened in the second half of the 34th game. Yeah. And much like in 2011, where BYU lost a key player in Brandon Davies, there's still a way to regroup. There's still another way to win. It's one of Dave Rose's mantras. There's always a way to win. If the shots aren't dropping, rebound.
Right.
If you're not rebounding as much as you'd like to, don't turn the ball over. There's always something you can do better or differently to give yourself a way to win. And now BYU's challenge is without maybe the most important player, you could argue, in terms of versatility on the team in Kyle Collinsworth. What can everyone else do just a little bit better to compensate for a very special player? There's always got to be a way. And I will say this, the most valuable player, if you will, from a pure points on the board standpoint is always going to be Tyler Haws.
Right.
And he's the guy who's shown capabilities like Jimmer in 2011 without Brandon Davies to go off and have that big game. BYU may need big games from Ty Haws to advance, but we know he's capable of them.
It was interesting when we were in the locker room earlier today, Sports Illustrated was talking to Tyler about Jimmer. He's like, you're putting up similar numbers, you're having a similar season, but nobody knows who you are. It was fascinating how quietly spectacular Tyler Haws has been this year.
You know, and Tyler's junior season and Jimmer's junior season are almost identical right now when you look at the numbers. And you know, Tyler may not explode like Jimmer did in his senior season with multiple 40-point games, but he won't need to actually end up as BYU's all-time leading scorer. If he just has another Tyler Haws type season, he will end up with more points than any player in BYU basketball history, and that's the guy BYU's riding into March Madness.
And the one thing we've learned, an 18-foot curl is not quite as sexy as the 30-foot bomb from Jimmer, but nevertheless, it's still pretty effective for Tyler. So for Greg Wrubell, I'm Dave Noriega in Milwaukee for SportsBeat.